morning and welcome to Fridays with Agent Kristin. Today I'm going to tackle the 3 reasons why, for aspiring writers, prologues don't tend to work. Reason number 1. Oftentimes in the sample pages that we receive that contain a prologue, the writer is doing what we call a gigantic info dump. In other words, they're incorporating all kinds of backstory elements that the writer is absolutely convinced that the reader needs to know in order for the story to move forward. But any good writer is going to incorporate those backstory elements as the story unfolds. Reason number 2 why prologues don't tend to work. Oftentimes the prologue, and a writer would never admit this, but it's oftentimes what we call lazy world building. In other words, the writer is convinced that the reader needs to know certain elements about the world in order to understand the story. So they incorporate those elements into a scene at the beginning of the novel in the prologue. But ultimately, as we continue reading, the prologue doesn't seem to have an impact or relevance to the rest of the story. Reason number 3 why prologues don't tend to work, and for me, this is the most important reason. Oftentimes, a prologue won't work because it's in a different writing style and oftentimes a different point of view from the rest of the novel. In other words, it doesn't have the same pacing, the same style, the same technique as the rest of the novel. So it doesn't end up being a good indicator of how the story will unfold or how good a work it will be. I am certain that there are probably a dozen other reasons why individual prologues don't work in the sample pages that we receive. I just want to highlight 3 of what I see are the most egregious reasons when I'm reading sample pages that I tend to then skip the prologue and move right on to chapter 1. And in fact, if you get a request for sample pages from an agent or an editor, I almost always recommend that the author not include that prologue. Tell you what, if you get a request for the full, then you can put the prologue back in when you send the full manuscript to the agent or editor. And then he or she can decide whether it works or doesn't work. But I do recommend that you give them a heads up so when they start reading, they're not thinking, wow, I don't remember this section. That's it. Thank you for spending another Friday with me, Agent Kristin, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.